In this video, I'm going to teach you how to take your super saw from sounding like this to sounding like this. You can download the Serum patch we're about to make for free, link in the description down below, but for now, let's jump into it. Welcome back to the studio. Okay, so for today, I'm going to show you how to make this super saw. I've got an instance of Serum loaded up here on a pure init patch. It's not a preset. All I've done is added some MIDI, which I'll show you right here. This is the melody that I'd like this keyboard to play. Let's just listen really quick on this really basic Serum patch. Pretty basic if you ask me, and now we're going to spice it up a bit. So let's jump back over to Serum. The first thing we're going to do on oscillator A is we're going to take this Unison and pull it all the way up to 16, and let's hear what that sounds like. So I think it's a little detuned, and I found this extra feature inside the global tab that I don't think I've ever used before. So check this out. Let's go over to global, and right here, the Unison feature, these actually change what happens inside that Unison knob. So by changing this range down to 1, what that means is that on the most extreme sides of this detune, that's only going to go to 1 semitone detune on the edge and then degrees of detune on the inside. But there's one cooler thing. In this mode, if you switch from linear to exponential, what that does is now you can see that the detune is much more close at the center, and it gets gradually more detuned as you go towards the edges. So let's listen to what this sounds like. I think I like it just above half, but I'm going to start in and start pulling out. Yeah, I like it right around there. So now let's bring in oscillator B. We're going to change this one to a basic shapes. And we're going to grab the wavetable position, move it up to the saw. And the reason why I like this saw is because now we have two saws playing at two different waveform shapes, if you want to think of it that way. And let's hear what this sounds like. First thing is we're going to add some Unison up about 7. And then we're going to drop, or we're going to raise the octave actually up 1. Cool. But now I feel like these are kind of in the same space, so I want to use LFO1, and we're going to create a shape that we can assign to level of oscillator A and oscillator B. So I'm just going to bring this down like this, turn it into envelope mode, leave it on 1/4, and assign it to level of A and level of B. And now on A, I'm going to bring this level back about 66% and have it raise just about, not quite to full. And then I'm going to do a little more extreme on level of oscillator B. Going to move it down to 50% and have it hit all the way up at 100. Now let's hear it. Pretty cool. Then let's go into the envelope, and I'd like to add some release time. So let's bring it up about 150 or so. Yeah, I like it right around 150. And what else? Let's add a filter onto this for both oscillators, that is. We're going to change this from MG low 12 to MG low 24. Bring the resonance down. Cool. And we are going to assign some macro features to this, but I also want to assign LFO1 to this cutoff and bring the effect back quite a bit, about 12. That's cool. Now I actually want to assign this macro 1 over to the cutoff. Let's bring the cutoff down just under half. And then when the macro knob is all the way up, we want the cutoff to be all the way up. So check it out. Cool. One more feature to grow on this page is this release knob of envelope 1. So when this macro's all the way down, I want this release to be about 150, but as we grow the sound, I want to bring this release knob up quite a bit, maybe about 10. Cool. I got to bring my master back because I realize I'm clipping. Sweet. Sounds cool. Now let's leave this macro all the way up for the time being. Let's go to the FX page. First thing is we're going to add a hyper dimension, but we're just going to bring the hyper all the way down. The dimension is going to be about 6%, and the mix is going to go up about 30%. Great. Now let's add in some reverb. I want this reverb to be right around 20%, but we're going to do a couple things to these knobs. Let's bring the size down to about 32, decay about 4.1, low cut we're going to bring up to half, and let's bring the spin and the spin depth back a little bit. And now we're going to do two things to adjust these knobs. First, with the macro, let's assign it to the high cut. So when the macro is all the way down, I want the high cut knob to be all the way up. That way it cuts out a lot of the highs that are going on in the reverb. And then as we turn the macro up, I want this knob to bring back in some of those highs. And then also, when we turn this knob up, I want this mix to go, let's bring it down actually to about 17%. And when the macro's all the way up, I want it to come up about 8. And then also we're going to add envelope 2 onto this mix knob. So that way when a note is playing, the reverb cuts out, and we're going to bring up the release of envelope 2 to about 500 milliseconds. And that way when we play a note, the reverb disappears, and when we stop playing, the reverb slowly creeps back in. Sounds like this. I like that sound. It keeps the dryness of the synth, and it makes it really present when you're playing, but it gives a lot of reverb when you're not playing. So next up, we are going to add a filter. And I'm not going to change the filter type. I'm just going to assign this macro knob onto the cutoff. And let's go into the matrix, find that macro we just assigned right here, and want to change it from bipolar to unipolar. And then now, I think just turn the cutoff up just a little bit, and let's hear what that sounds like. Pretty cool. And last for the effects is the compressor. So I want to bring the release up just a little bit, about 100 and some, and the attack about 110. And then the threshold, let's eyeball it. That sounds really good. And now we've lost some volume, which is all good. I'm going to turn my master up just a little bit. And I want to do a cool thing with this macro. So let's turn the gain up to 3. And then what I want to do is assign the macro to turn the volume down when the macro is all the way up. That way, when you turn the macro all the way down, the volume comes up about 3 dB, and that's really helpful because it helps boost the sound when it's much quieter, and it ducks the sound when it's much louder. So check this out. Feels a lot more even that way to me. So last thing we're going to do is in the matrix, let's assign LFO2. Let's make this shape with it. Double click in the middle and then drag this to be pretty steep. Turn this into envelope mode, and let's change the rate to a 30-second note. Now we're going to assign LFO2 onto our global master tune and change it again from bipolar to unipolar. and I want to bring this up about 12. This will give us a little bit of a pluck right on the attack of the sound. Let me exaggerate it for you so you can hear it. If you turn this really far up, you'll hear that pluck right at the beginning of the sound. But I don't like it that exaggerated. It's just a little bit of a feel thing, so I'm going to bring it back to 12. Yeah, it feels good right there. So let's go back to the oscillator tab and make sure we have everything here. Cool. And now just to hear it in a song, I've prepared some drum loops. Again, anybody that is a patron is going to get this entire session. So you're going to get access to all of these drums that I've placed in here for this small example. And what I'm actually going to do is bypass the one that we just made and play along with the one I've previously made and just show you how this can fit into a song. The only thing I've done from here is I've added some compression, some saturation and limiting. And then also I've added a Nicky Romero kickstart for some sidechain stuff that happens. If you want to see how I make my macros to add low cuts and compression and saturation and stuff really fast, I have another YouTube tutorial. You can find it over on my channel. And it's also a free download, so you can download this and get it on your session. But if you download this exact session, if you're a patron, then you're going to get this as part of this session. But check it out. This is what we got going on. So thanks for watching. There's a link in the description below for a free download of this Serum patch. If you want to get your hands on this entire session and have access to the MIDI notes that I've played and all the samples and drums and things that I have in here, then go over to Patreon, become a member at the $2 tier or higher, and you'll get access to this entire session. As always, leave a comment down below, like the video, and consider subscribing if you want to see more of this type of content. But until I see you again along the journey, oneness in sound, I am OnenO. Peace.
Support OnenO on patreon.com and gain access to exclusive content.